Normally, I start all of my episodes with a smart fact, but this is a little bit different. It's a different episode. It is a fact, all right, but a very sad fact for me and my family. Lost a family member on the 7th of November last year. So it was my younger brother, and his demise was very sudden. It was unexpected, and it left devastation in its wake. And in this episode of Smarter with Sid, what I wanted to do was talk about my grief, the way in which I processed this grief, and the learnings that I got from it. Because I know that dwelling on the negatives that may come with a situation like this is very tempting. And of course, I can talk on about it. But I thought what I would do is make some lemonade here and share some insights on how maybe to deal with grief. The context over here is brutally simple. What happened on the 7th of November was something of a shock to the system, because my younger brother, besides being a fantastic software professional, was also a physical trainer who was in tip-top shape. So we really didn't expect him to slide down into septicemia and all the ill effects of it. It was a staph infection eventually that got him. You know me, I'm traveling all over the place. When I heard about this, I traveled back to be with the family, and we are a very close-knit family. And it was to our dismay and shock to see how things unfolded. Clearly, it was devastating. Shri Harsh, my brother, leaves behind a wife and two really grief-struck parents and me, his brother. And he was very close to me. He was somebody who has been my pal throughout my life. He was somebody who was, playing cricket with me and just, goofing around with me, how younger brothers are, right? So that was a very good dynamic. In fact, we built our gym together and we were very involved with each other's lives. So that's the context. I just wanted to give you a sense of the fact that this not only was a close family member, but it was probably a very deep and loving relationship that we all had with Shri Harsh. Now, the fact is that if this is the context, clearly we were all shocked. And there is no easy way to put it. You cannot deal with grief as if it's a magic formula. So what I'm going to try and share with you is with the objective to maybe just share my lessons. They might be completely wasted on you because everyone has a different process for grief, or they might be useful because, face it, all of us have to go through grief at one point of time or the other, right? One of the things that certainly worked out for me was I immediately started teaching my class, like about 10 days later or something of that sort. And it helped me. The reason why it helped me was because I was connected to young energy, I was connected to students, and I just got into work. I started teaching. I was 100%, my mood lifted whenever I was teaching. Of course, when the class ended, I knew what the reality was, but my students knew what was going on, and they were very supportive. They were extremely supportive of a professor who was going out there on a limb to be with them. And this certainly helped my overall dealing with grief. Mind you, my suggestion would be never to overwork yourself. I certainly was very aware of the challenge that I felt like escaping into work. So balance has to be maintained. But work does prove to be a very good escape. So that's lesson number 1 from grief and how to manage it. The second thing that I realized is as soon as I landed from the UK, I realized that I just have to, be there for other people. So I had to be there for Shri Harsh's friends. I had to be there for his family. And I think that helped me. I don't think that was a very selfless act that I did. I think just being there for others allowed me to kind of be slightly bigger than my own feelings. And so therefore I was focused on the other person. And because I was focused on the other person, it helped me detach myself from my feelings for a while, look at the people who are, alive and grieving, along with me, but be there for them in a meaningful way. And so it was out of that I started looking at my relationships differently with especially my family and my friends, and making them more loving, more connected, more centered, and just participating in stupid things or meaningful things was good for me. I had to take specific care about the fact that I was not ignoring my own grief. So, yes, I did take therapy. I took counseling, grief counseling, which has turned to be a very good start for the therapy that I was getting into. And I encourage anybody to look into a good therapist to make sure that you get the support that you need in a very, very trying time. That doesn't mean that they're going to solve your problem, but it just helps to get those thoughts outside of your head for starters. But doing that and balancing that with helping others become stronger people, better people in a collective time of grief is something that really works very well to deal with your own grief. The third thing that I realized was, after he passed away, I realized that life is pretty meaningless. And the reason why life becomes pretty meaningless is that we have so many blind spots around us. And those blind spots suddenly come and bite you in the ass when nobody's looking. And you think you've got everything in control and the rest of it. But frankly, it is not going to work unless and until you put your own meaning to life. Way in which we put our own meaning to life is by defining goals and outcomes and the rest of it. And I'm no different. I started creating goals and outcomes before Shri passed away, and I was successfully creating meaning for myself. But then suddenly, after his demise, I started questioning all those goals and all those things, because I realized that just only looking at outcomes is going to be quite meaningless for me. So what I did instead was kind of recalibrated. It wasn't easy, but there was sufficient enough motivation to move from outcome to journey. So one of the things that I did say to myself was to just shift to a place wherein I am enjoying the journey more, if not equal to targeting an outcome. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't target outcomes. I'm not saying don't have goals and the rest of it. And we will have a separate episode on goal setting and my own perspective on it. But the fact is that you need to enjoy the journey, boss. You need to actually enjoy each and every moment, because that is how you can, have a fulfilling life. Now, there are times when you need to give meaning where there is no meaning. Like, why did he pass away, for example, was something that was hitting us all the time. And we have our own meanings. Okay, he lived a full life was one. Okay, everyone has got to go at one point in time and the rest of it. But if you don't find meaning to it, maybe creating your own meaning for that specific circumstance might help. I must confess, I'm still struggling with that because I find the whole thing quite meaningless. But I have found meaning in journey much more than outcome. Also realized, and this is something that will be really useful to a lot of you, is that at your worst possible time, when you're feeling really low, when you're feeling really shitty, really horrible, you can still access a sense of peace. I'm not saying you can be happy. I'm not saying you can be joyful. I'm not saying you are going to suddenly find pleasure in all those things that you found pleasurable. But you can find peace at the worst possible time. That is my experience, and I would encourage you to find peace if you are struggling like this. Finding peace is the first step. You can move ahead from there as and how your own, condition tells you. But you can find peace in your worst possible moments. And as Shri would say, he used to keep saying this, I pity the living. And I used to laugh at it when, we used to have a drink together. But now I get what he said. Don't pity the people who are not there. Pity the living because they're struggling with all of this. We are trying to make sense of a completely senseless world, especially in a tough time. And I hope this reaches out to a lot of people who might be going through this. And even if you aren't, just have a listen, and it might be useful at some point in time, because we will all have to face it, isn't it? I hope you like this episode. And I'm not going to do the usual like, subscribe to this podcast because this is a little different. But I thank IVM for the opportunity that it gives somebody like me as a podcaster to be able to do this and reach out to you and maybe make a little lemonade. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.